Al-Shabab fighters in Somalia have carried out another attack in the capital Mogadishu. They're waging war against the Somali government, UN peacekeepers and in neighbouring countries too. So how big a threat is Al-Shabab to Africa, and could a strong Somali government defeat them? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Martine Dennis. Al-Shabab fighters in Somalia have struck again, managing to evade security measures to attack downtown Mogadishu. Their target, yet again, a hotel popular with government leaders and members of parliament. Al-Shabab have waged a relentless war against the government since being forced from the capital. Somalis haven't seen a stable government since 1991. Al-Shabab has also attacked neighbouring countries who've sent peacekeeping troops to Somalia. We'll get into our discussion in just a moment, but first, Victoria Gatenby reports.
A suicide bomber detonates his explosives inside the Sahafi hotel in Mogadishu. Outside, a car is on fire. It had been packed with explosives and used by gunmen to blast their way into the hotel compound. They then stormed the hotel itself. The Sahafi hotel is popular with Somali politicians. At least one current and one former member of parliament are among the dead. Senior government officials and a journalist were also killed. One MP called the attack a very dark day for Somalia.
I was at the scene of the explosion, busy taking photos, when a car full of explosive detonated beside me. I fell on the ground and saw part of my body bleeding. I was with another journalist who was killed in the attack.
Somali soldiers were called in to recapture the hotel. Al-Shabab, which operates in Somalia and neighbouring countries, has claimed responsibility.
It's clear, if you look back at events in Somalia over the past 6 months, that Al-Shabab still has the capability to organize major terrorist attacks in the capital. It's unfortunate that these terrorist attacks still occur sporadically. Overall, the government's forces are clearly in the offensive and have the momentum.
In April, fighters from the group killed 147 people in an attack on Garissa University College in Kenya. And in September 2013, Al-Shabab fighters stormed the Westgate shopping mall in Nairobi, killing 67 people. Somalia has been devastated by decades of civil unrest. 4 years ago, Somalia's government pushed Al-Shabab out of major cities, including Mogadishu, with the help of African Union soldiers. But attacks like this show that Somalia's government and its supporters still have much more work to do. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera.
So how did Al-Shabab come about? The armed group was formed in 2006 as the radical youth wing of the Union of Islamic Courts, which was governing the capital Mogadishu at the time. Well, since then, it's been waging war against the UN-backed government in Somalia and wants to impose a strict version of Sharia law nationwide. Al-Shabab attacks haven't been limited to Somalia, time and again demonstrating its ability to strike in neighbouring countries too. With up to 9,000 fighters, attacks have been carried out in Uganda, and in the past 2 years, Kenya has been a regular target with bomb attacks causing hundreds of deaths. Repeated attempts to defeat Al-Shabab, which has been linked to Al-Qaeda, have failed. Although Al-Shabab fighters have been ejected from most of the main towns they used to control in Somalia, they do remain a potent threat. For more on this now, I'm joined by our guests. Here in Doha, Afyare Elmi, who's Professor of International Affairs at Qatar University and author of Understanding Somalia Conflagration, Identity, Islam, Peacebuilding. In Nairobi, we have Yusuf Omar Al Azhari, who's former political advisor to the President of the Transitional Federal Government of Somalia. Also in Nairobi, Matt Bryden, Executive Chairman of the think tank and consultancy firm Sahan. He joins us via Skype. Welcome to you all, gentlemen. Thank you for coming to talk about the current situation in Somalia. Can I start with you here in the studio with me, Afyare Elmi? Why isn't the current government able to maintain control over at least Mogadishu, the capital, and offer security to Somalia's citizens?
Well, first of all, there are a number of reasons. Somalia has been a collapsed state for quite some time, and there are, the entire country has just, has been disintegrating for quite a while. But when you look at the overall capacity of the country, for instance, as I was just mentioning, the Somali government, the cabinet just passed the budget of 2016, which is about $200 million. What can you do with $200 million in a serious, can a viable state work with that amount of money and establish a security? So that's, for instance, one aspect of it. So you'll see security forces not being paid for quite a long time. I've been told by sources in Mogadishu that for the last while, even the international partners that committed themselves to pay for the security forces were paying, on irregular base, for instance, 3 times or so. So what you see here is that overall, when you don't have enough money and when you don't have enough security forces, there's only so much that you can do. More importantly, there is a part domestically. I have to say that the Somali politicians were underperforming at best, if not not performing at all. And this is a very serious issue when there is no will to face this. For instance, they're doing the same thing over and over, and they are expecting a different result, and that's not possible.
Yusuf, in Nairobi, you've been a member of one of the transitional governments. When will Somalia come out of transition and offer its 8 or 9 million citizens a form of government?
Well, that does not depend only on the Somalis. It depends also on those who are denying us to get that our sovereignty as we used to have. Secondly, of course, the internal struggle and internal displacement is another factor for that. And also not having our own security intact due to lack of funds and due to the embargo which the United Nations has imposed on Somalia after the civil war, that they could not import enough ammunition to defend themselves is another factor. And we have enough soldiers in the country, Somali trained soldiers in the country, but the lack of ammunition and lack of coordination is one factor which is really giving Al-Shabab leeway. And also because of Al-Shabab was defeated from most of the major towns, as you have said, and some of them, quite a number of them, a sizable number of them have intermingled with their tribes and are working clandestinely and exploding targets at random. And this is a very sad day for Somalia today, because really most of those who have died were from the government, particularly from the parliament. There were 3 who have died and 3 who have been really injured very seriously, which are very senior members of parliament. But we could cope with this if we are really allowed to have our sovereignty and have enough ammunition and armament in the country and collect enough revenue. But as you know, Somalia is, after the civil war, has been in turmoil, and there has been dismemberment of regions, and each region having his own administration.
Right. Okay,
and
Yusuf,
there is no contact and unity between them.
Can I jump in there and then put that point, please, to Matt, who's also in Nairobi. And Matt, it sounds very much from what we've heard from both of our Somali guests that Somalia is not in charge of its own destiny.
Well, I think there's certainly some truth to that, to the extent that the security of the country is in large part the responsibility of African Union forces. There are somewhere in the order of 22,000 African Union troops, mainly from neighbouring countries, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Kenya, and Uganda, in the country, while Somalia is trying to re-establish its own security forces. And of course, with that type of security presence, you also naturally have the political interests that come with it. You have a United Nations mission in Somalia that is to provide support and, in some ways, leadership for the political process. So there is very much a robust external involvement in Somali affairs. But that said, I think there are some other dimensions of the problems that have been raised so far. One is that Al-Shabab is in part a small extremist jihadist group, but it's also been able to convert its cause into an insurgency. And that requires a much more population-based approach than we've seen so far, much more politically driven approach to wean communities and regions that are actually tolerant of Al-Shabab or supportive of Al-Shabab back into the political process. And there is a window of opportunity to do that in 2016, when the next phase of Somalia's political transition is to come to an end. Also, the issue that's been raised about the regional administrations. Somalia is now a federal state, so it's a requirement of the constitution that regional administrations be established, and much more could be done to help them in policing and in assuring their own security in different parts of the country.
Okay.
And then lastly,
Sorry, Matt. Continue with your last thought.
Well, lastly, I think with respect to the security sector, this is a long-term effort. More guns, more ammunition is not going to solve the problem overnight. Somalia now has over 15,000 troops notionally under arms, but as a recent UN report documented, based on information provided by the government, there is a low degree of integration. There is the appearance of corruption at various levels in the military hierarchy. There's an inability to account for the ammunition and the arms that are received. And so there are systemic problems that really are going to take time to be resolved.
All right, OK. Let's very quickly then look at how we've got to this position now. Now, since gaining independence from the UK in 1960, Somalis have endured years of suffering and they've never seen lasting peace. Somalia descended into chaos in 1991 when the dictator Mohamed Siad Barre was overthrown after ruling since the 1960s. Now, his demise was followed by years of fighting between rival armed groups and failed governments. In 1992, the US sent thousands of troops to Somalia, fighting a fierce battle to try to restore order in Mogadishu a year later. That mission was a failure. It was a famous failure, actually, because it was turned into a Hollywood movie when 2 Black Hawk helicopters were shot down and 18 Americans killed. After years of chaos and many attempts to fill the power vacuum, a new internationally backed government was finally installed in 2012. An African Union peacekeeping force has also been strengthened, and since then Somalis have enjoyed relative stability, highlighted by John Kerry's brief but historic visit in May, the first ever by a US Secretary of State. So Afyare here in the studio, we've highlighted then how we've got to this position. We know that Al-Shabab is changing its tactics, is now getting a certain degree of support from communities around the country. Let's have a look at how this can possibly resolve. Now, very recently, the incumbent government has declared that the universal franchise should not be applied to Somalia. So Somalia is not ready for one person, one vote. Is that going to be helpful or not?
Well, I guess what they are trying to say is that it is not practical. They are not saying that it should not be the case. So in essence, I guess whatever rhetoric they use, what is happening at the moment is that we are back to where we started in 2012 politically. Politically, there has not been a significant progress when you look at the way things started. Still, the constitution is going to be provisional. It has been heavily designed by outsiders anyway, and it's going to be...
And there's a timeline imposed.
So technically, it's going to be the same. The whole thing, actually, from where we started in 2012 and where we are today, I think is just 2 steps forward, 3 backward, and basically that's what has been happening. So politically, there is not much. Security-wise, one can say that there was slow progress here and there, but still you see when we are talking about the heart of Mogadishu today and the attack. And in fact, Al-Shabaab has not changed its tactic. They are doing the same thing. You know, attacking, one explosion, and then a bunch of men going in the hotel. It's the government that is just doing the same thing and not succeeding. So it's the government that needs to revise its tactic, in fact, because for Al-Shabaab, it's working. For like more than 10 hotels, they went to the presidency, the parliament. So it has worked, and I think they will continue to use the same strategy. It's up to the government to come up with another form of tactic that's superior than that. So for me, the same is going on. What I just want to note here is that politically the progress was almost little, I would say, if not zero. In terms of security, I totally don't think we've made also the security progress that we have liked to make. Al-Shabaab obviously have not lost much. Even though they lost territory, they are still taxing whoever they want to tax, and they are still doing whatever they want to do in the major towns. So technically, we have to come up with a different thing. We cannot keep doing what we are doing and expect a different result.
And Yusuf in Nairobi, what different strategy do you think the government should adopt in order to take on Al-Shabaab in a realistic and in a concrete fashion, in order to deliver the security, the stability that Somalia needs in order to create an environment in which elections could be held?
Well, they could have done a lot, of course, but lack of fund and lack of money and lack of proper organized administration is the factor that hampered everything. You know, the government do not collect revenue as it wants from the whole country. It only collects from Mogadishu and the surrounding, and therefore they don't have enough money to continue these things. Of course, the donor countries, of course, give them money, but that money is not controlled properly, and there is no follow-up and real check and balance in that the money which comes from outside. The little revenue which they get, of course, is not enough even for the administration and salaries. And therefore, the government could have done a lot through the legal, by preparing the legal base for this 1916 election, through the parliament and through passing laws and making it intact and approving the already existing constitution, which forms a federal state. Have they done that? Of course, that would have been a step, but it seems that the government have really lacked that ability to establish that completely, and the problem is there is no proper administration who will follow up to that extent, and even the qualified people who would really do a lot. All these people who have been appointed in these areas were through kinship, and therefore most of them are not up to the standard. Okay,
Yusuf, thank you very much for that. Now, at this point, we say a big thank you to Matt Bryden in Nairobi. Thank you very much indeed. And introduce you to Abdirisak Omar, who is in Mogadishu, the Somali capital. He's Minister of National Security for the Somali government. Thank you very much indeed for joining our conversation. Why aren't you able to provide security for the people of Mogadishu?
Well, it's not only one person that's responsible for the security of a nation. It takes every citizen to be part of that security. I think I would say that more than 50% of security is about perception. As soon as I came to be the Minister of Internal Security, security has improved for almost 8 months now. And one indication is the frequency of attacks that have been taking place in Mogadishu has reduced now. Now the trend is that you might have one explosion or one attack every 2 months. Before I became the Minister of Internal Security, there were at least 2 or 3 attacks or incidents that were taking place every month. So I would say that the security have improved a lot. You can see that people are coming back. The infrastructure of the country is being built. You can see that people are investing in the city of Mogadishu. These are all indications. These are positive indications that shows that the security has improved.
But we're still seeing a brutal attack in which at least 15 people are dead, and they're clearly able to strike almost at will, targeting, of course, your very own colleagues, members of parliament, members of the security forces.
Well, first of all, let me say that even though some of these attacks are not preventable, it could happen in London, it could happen in New York. If there's someone that is willing to kill himself, then it becomes very difficult to prevent it. The only way that you can minimize is by using the intelligence that you gather. And we have been getting good intelligence sources. We have been gathering and we have been analyzing it, and we have been using those intelligence reports that we were getting to prevent many before they even happen. But we don't tell the media, we don't tell the public that we have prevented a potential attack. But we have been doing that. The second thing is that once the attack happens, our security agencies are very capable and well trained and well experienced to minimize the damage that the militants wanted to inflict on civilian targets. Like today, they were in the hotel for 5 hours, and the number of government officials that were killed in that incident were only 2.
Okay, well, I suppose that's not a high number, is it, for Somalia? But can we haven't got a huge amount of time, can we spend the rest of the programme talking about the future? You are going to have to talk to Al-Shabab, aren't you? You're going to have to bring them into the political process.
Well, we have a national security strategy in which we are willing to talk and have a dialogue with anyone who wants to give up violence. Anybody who wants to stop getting their objectives by ways and means of violence, we will talk to them. The president has given an amnesty to those who wanted to give up those extremist ideologies, and we are open to that.
Sorry, Minister, I have to jump in. Sorry, Minister, I have to jump in because we are short of time. And can I put the same point to Yusuf in Nairobi? Because part of the problem seems to be that the political process is exceedingly narrow in Somalia and is not as inclusive as it might be.
Yes, that's true. Of course, the political process is very narrow due to egoism and political maneuvering of certain leaders in the country who like really to dominate the leadership all the time without liberalizing it and making it in a democratic way, for fear that they may not come back again and they may lose their seats. So there is no sincerity in Somalia at all in establishing a good politic and going out of this quagmire, political quagmire, which is existing. And we don't know how really to solve it, because those who are sitting on the chair are not sincere in trying to open up and democratize the whole system.
Okay,
for fear of their seats. That's exactly the main obstacle.
Thank you very much indeed. I have to end the programme, sadly, there. There's obviously scope for a much longer conversation about Somalia. But thank you very much indeed. Yusuf Omar Al Azhari in Nairobi, thank you very much indeed. And Minister of National Security, Abdirisak Omar, thank you for joining us. And here in the studio, of course, Afyare Elmi, thank you very much indeed. And as ever, thank you for watching. You can leave your comments on the programme page of our website, Al-Jazeera.com, and you can post your views on Facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or, of course, you can tweet us at AJ Inside Story. Thank you for watching. From me, Martine Dennis, and the whole team, it's bye for now.